The message came during Admiral Sophia Grant's dinner party. She was in the middle of pouring wine for her guests when her wrist communicator buzzed. She excused herself with a smile and stepped into her study. "Grant here," she said. The holographic face of Lieutenant Commander Jason Wright appeared, his expression unusually tense. "Admiral, the Europa mining colony is under attack." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Attack? By whom?" "The Valtherians, ma'am. They've destroyed 3 habitat domes already." Sophia was silent for a moment. The Valtherians were an ancient alien species, proud and somewhat arrogant, but they had lived in peace with the rest of the galaxy for 3,000 years, just like everyone else. "Are you certain this isn't some kind of accident?" she asked. "No, ma'am. They sent a message claiming the mining colony violates their ancestral territory. They demand all humans leave immediately." Sophia sighed and glanced at her watch. "Well, that's inconvenient. I just opened a very good bottle of wine." Wright blinked in confusion. "Ma'am, this is the first act of aggression by any species in 3 millennia. I'm aware of that." "Right." She tapped her fingers on her desk. "Alert the Galactic Council. Wake up the old defense network. And prep my ship." "Yes, ma'am." "Should I declare a planetary emergency?" Sophia considered this. No need to spoil everyone's evening. This might be resolved quickly." She ended the call and returned to her dinner party. Her 10 guests were chatting happily, enjoying the wine and appetizers. "Everything okay, Sophia?" asked Peter, her neighbor. "Oh, just a small situation I need to handle," she said, picking up her wine glass. "The Valtherians are attacking our Europa colony." The room fell silent. "Attacking?" asked Mary, a teacher. "Like, with weapons?" "Apparently so," Sophia said, taking the sip of her wine. "First time in 3,000 years anyone's tried something like this. I'll need to head up to my ship in about an hour." Her guests stared at her, then at each other. "Should we be worried?" Peter asked carefully. Sophia smiled. "I don't think so. It's just the Valtherians being dramatic. You all enjoy dinner. I've got a casserole in the oven that should be ready in 20 minutes. In space, things were less calm. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos as the news spread. Representatives from 200 species shouted questions and demands. The Valtherian ambassador was conspicuously absent. "Order. We must have order," shouted the council president, a tall, thin alien named Zizexexbalt. "This is unprecedented. On Europa, the mining colony's shields were holding, but just barely." Colony Director Sam Miller watched the alien ships circling overhead. They were beautiful in a strange way, with curved hulls that shimmered like oil on water. "Director, we've got a response from Earth," his assistant said. "What are they sending?" "The fleet." His assistant looked confused. "They say Admiral Grant will be here in 6 hours. She asks if we can hold until then." "Just the Admiral. No fleet." "The message doesn't mention a fleet." Sam looked back at the alien ships. A beam of energy struck the shield, making it flicker. "Tell her we'll try our best." Aboard her personal vessel, Admiral Grant changed from her dinner clothes into her uniform. It still fit perfectly, even though she'd never worn it for actual combat. No one had for thousands of years. Lieutenant Commander Wright supervised the bridge crew as they reactivated weapons systems that had been decorative for generations. "Are you sure these will work?" Wright asked the ship's engineer. "They should," the woman replied. "They've been maintained as historical artifacts, but I never thought we'd actually fire them." Admiral Grant entered the bridge and took her seat in the command chair. "Status report," she said calmly. "The Valtherians have 7 ships at Europa. Our colony shields are at 60% and falling. The Galactic Council is in emergency session, and our weapons are mostly operational." Grant nodded. "Set course for Europa, maximum speed." She straightened her uniform jacket. "It seems we need to remind someone why humans were once feared throughout the galaxy." Wright hesitated. "Ma'am, none of us have ever fought in a real battle." Grant smiled. "Neither have they, Commander. That's our advantage." Dr. Alan Pierce was closing up the Museum of Human Conflict when the call came. It was nearly midnight, and he had stayed late to finish a new exhibit on the ancient Earth-Mars War. The museum was usually empty. Most people found the idea of humans fighting each other strange and disturbing. His phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Government Office. "This is Dr. Pierce," he answered. "Dr. Pierce, this is Secretary of Defense William Ross. How quickly can you get to Washington?" Alan blinked in surprise. "Washington? About 3 hours by shuttle. May I ask why?" "The Valtherians have attacked Europa. We need your expertise." Alan almost dropped his phone. "My expertise? I'm a museum curator. You're also the only person on Earth who has extensively studied historical warfare. We need you here immediately." 2 hours later, Alan found himself in a hastily assembled war room. Men and women in dust-covered uniforms moved around with purpose. Many of the uniforms didn't quite fit right. They had been in storage for centuries. Secretary Ross approached. "Dr. Pierce, thank you for coming. Admiral Grant will join us remotely from her ship in 30 minutes. Until then, I need you to brief the team on basic military strategies." Alan looked at the expectant faces around him. "I've only studied these concepts academically. I've never actually fought in a war. No one has for thousands of years." A woman in a general's uniform smiled. "That's true for everyone in this room, Doctor, but you've at least read the books." At the Galactic Council, Ambassador Zix Thrall arrived to negotiate with the human representatives. The tall, blue-skinned alien had expected to find them panicking or outraged. Instead, he found a small group of humans chatting calmly over coffee. "Ambassador Kyle Mendez." "Zix?" Thrall asked. A man in a simple suit stood and offered his hand. "That's me. Thanks for coming. Coffee?" "No, thank you," the alien said, confused by the casual atmosphere. "I expected your species to be more concerned about this violation of peace." Kyle shrugged. "Oh, we're taking it seriously. But freaking out won't help, will it? Please, have a seat. Tell us what the Council is planning to do about the Valtherians." Outside Earth's orbit, Captain Olivia Carter of the U.S. Dauntless watched as her crew prepared the ship's weapons. The Dauntless was technically a museum piece that performed ceremonial flybys at special events. Now it was the first line of defense if the Valtherians came to Earth. "Captain, weapons are online," reported her first officer. Mostly?" Olivia asked. "The targeting system is a bit old. We might need to aim manually." Olivia laughed. "Well, it's been 1,200 years since anyone fired a weapon in actual combat. I guess we can't expect everything to work perfectly." Her radar operator suddenly straightened. "Captain, 3 ships approaching from the outer system. Valtherian design." Olivia felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. "Battle stations. Let's see if we remember how to do this." On Europa, the colony shields were failing. Director Sam Miller led his people into the emergency bunkers deep beneath the surface. The ground shook as another Valtherian weapon hit. "Why are they doing this?" asked a frightened colonist. "No one has fought a war in 3,000 years." "I don't know," Sam answered honestly. "But Admiral Grant is on her way." "Just one admiral? What can she do against 7 warships?" Sam had no answer. But somehow, he wasn't as scared as he should be. There was something in the Admiral's calm message that had given him hope. In her ship, now halfway to Europa, Admiral Grant reviewed the ancient battle plans. Lieutenant Commander Wright stood nearby, watching her with curiosity. "Ma'am, if I may ask, why aren't you more worried about this?" Grant looked up and smiled. "Because, Wright, there's something the Valtherians have forgotten. Something all peaceful species choose to forget." "What's that?" "Humans didn't create 3,000 years of peace because we became peaceful," she said. We created peace because the alternative was too terrible to contemplate. The galaxy chose to forget what humans are capable of when provoked. It seems the Voltherians need a reminder. Engineer Daniel Hayes whistled as he adjusted the power couplings on what used to be the luxury cruise ship Star of Venus. 3 days ago, it had been taking tourists around Saturn's rings. Now it was being converted into a battle cruiser. "You seem awfully happy for someone preparing for war," said his assistant, a young woman named Kelly. Daniel shrugged. "I've never built a warship before. It's an interesting challenge." "But people might die," Kelly said quietly. Daniel's expression became serious for a moment. "I know. That's why we need to make sure this ship is the best it can be." Then he smiled again. "Besides, I've always wondered how those ancient weapon systems actually worked. The diagrams in the history books were fascinating. Across the hangar, similar conversions were happening to dozens of other ships. Tourist vessels, cargo haulers, and science ships were all being fitted with hastily manufactured weapons. The atmosphere was oddly cheerful, almost like a festival. On the Galactic Council observation deck, Hector watched the humans with growing confusion. As the Council's chief anthropologist, it was his job to understand other species. But the human response to the Voltherian attacks made no sense to him. "They should be terrified," he said to his assistant. "Their peaceful way of life is threatened. Yet they act like this is fun." Below them, a group of human engineers had just successfully installed a weapons system on a science vessel. They were now celebrating with drinks and music. "Perhaps they don't understand the seriousness of the situation," his assistant suggested. "No," Hector replied. "I think they understand it better than anyone else." At the newly established Earth Defense Command, Colonel Frank Martinez addressed his Marines. Most of them had never held a real weapon before today. Their unit had been ceremonial, performing drills at important events. "Ladies and gentlemen," Frank said, "welcome to your first day as actual Marines, not just people who dress up as Marines." There was nervous laughter. "I know none of us expected to fight a real war, but here we are. The good news is the enemy doesn't have any more experience than we do. They've been peaceful just as long as we have." A young Marine raised his hand. "Sir, shouldn't we be more worried? This is the end of 3,000 years of peace." Frank grinned. "Son, humans have been at peace for 3,000 years because we chose to be, not because we had to be. The Voltherians are about to learn the difference." After the briefing, Frank returned to his office to find a package waiting. Inside was a bottle of expensive whiskey with a note that read, "To celebrate your welcome back to War Party tonight. Don't start the fighting without me. Admiral Grant." Frank laughed out loud. In deep space, the Voltherian Fleet Admiral, Supreme Warlord Krax, was growing increasingly frustrated. His ships had surrounded the Europa colony, yet the humans showed no signs of surrender. Worse, their communications, which his forces had intercepted, showed no fear. "Play the latest intercept," he ordered his communications officer. A human voice filled the bridge. "Hey Sam, it's Admiral Grant. We're about an hour out. Hang tight. Oh, and save some of those Voltherians for us. I've got some Marines here who are excited to try out the old boarding tactics they found in the history books." There was laughter in the background of the recording. Krax slammed his fist on his chair. "They mock us. Do they not understand we have broken their precious peace? We have weapons pointed at their colony." His second-in-command looked troubled. "Perhaps we made a mistake, Supreme Warlord. The historical texts warned about provoking humans." "Nonsense," Krax snapped. "They have been soft and peaceful for 3 millennia. They have forgotten how to fight." At that moment, alarms blared across his ship. "Multiple vessels approaching at high speed," reported his sensor officer. "They appear to be civilian ships, but they're armed." On the bridge of her ship, now renamed Slight Inconvenience, Admiral Grant watched the Voltherian fleet grow larger on her view screen. All ships, "This is Admiral Grant," she said into her communicator. "Remember your history lessons, people. Let's show the galaxy why everyone worked so hard to keep us peaceful for 3,000 years." Dr. Elaine Powell sat in her comfortable chair, surrounded by ancient books. At 82, she never expected to be called back to work. But here she was, translating military texts that no one had read in centuries. "Dr. Powell, have you found anything useful?" asked the young officer who had been assigned to her. She held up a dusty book. "This manual on space combat tactics from 2450 is quite helpful. The author had some interesting ideas about using civilian ships against military vessels." The officer looked surprised. "Those tactics are that old." Elaine smiled. "Young man, humans have been creative about killing each other for much longer than we've been creative about living peacefully." In a different part of the hastily established war center, William Baker stared at holographic displays showing the positions of both human and Valtherian ships. At 25, Will had never even thought about real warfare. His strategic mind had been used only for complex virtual games. "Your suggestion to split our forces was brilliant," said Admiral Grant's aide. "The Valtherians are confused by our approach." Will shrugged. "It's just like the Battle of New Jupiter in Galactic Conquest VI. You use small, fast ships to distract the enemy while your converted civilian vessels move into position." The aide stared at him. "You're basing military strategy on a game." "Well, the game was based on historical battles," Will replied. "Besides, it's working, isn't it?" Far from Earth, the human colony of New Seattle received an urgent message. Valtherian ships had been spotted heading their way. The colony had no military presence, no weapons, and no defenses. Civilian Administrator Natalie Ross called an emergency meeting in the town hall. "The Valtherians will be here in 6 hours," she told the gathered colonists. "We have no weapons and no military." A worried murmur spread through the crowd. But she continued with a smile. "We have farming equipment, mining tools, and 3,000 years of peace, during which we apparently got very bored and watched a lot of old war movies." The crowd grew quiet. "How many of you played Battle Settlers as kids?" she asked. Almost every hand went up. "Good. Then you know what to do when someone tries to take your settlement." 6 hours later, 3 Valtherian ships entered orbit around New Seattle. They expected to find panicked civilians ready to surrender. Instead, they found empty streets and silent buildings. "No signs of evacuation," reported the Valtherian scout leader. "They must be hiding." The scouts landed in the colony's central plaza. As they spread out to search for humans, strange things began to happen. Farming machines suddenly activated, driving themselves toward the aliens. Mining drills burst from the ground. Even kitchen appliances seemed to attack, flying through the air on makeshift propulsion systems. From their hidden control room, Natalie and her team guided their improvised weapons using tablets normally used for farming and construction. "I can't believe this is working," said her assistant, watching as a Valtherian scout ran from a relentless coffee maker. "Humans have always been good at turning everyday things into weapons," Natalie replied. "It's one of our less peaceful talents." The Valtherians retreated in confusion, sending an urgent message to their fleet. "The humans are using domestic appliances as weapons. Request immediate extraction." On his flagship, Supreme Warlord Krax received the retreat request with disbelief. "Defeated by kitchen appliances," he roared. "Impossible." His communications officer looked up nervously. "Sir, we're receiving a message from the human ships." "Put it on screen," Krax ordered. Admiral Grant's face appeared. She was smiling. "Supreme Warlord Krax, I presume. This is Admiral Sophia Grant of Earth. I was wondering if we could have a quick chat about your invasion. You see, you've caught us at a somewhat inconvenient time. I was in the middle of a dinner party." Krax stared in disbelief. "You dare to joke while we are at war?" Grant's smile widened. "Oh, I don't think we're at war yet, Warlord. This is just us warming up. Trust me, You'll know when the actual war begins. You might want to reconsider your options before that happens." As the transmission ended, Krax felt, for the first time, a flicker of doubt. What had they awakened? The Galactic Council chamber was packed. Representatives from 200 species sat in tense silence as Ambassador Kyle Mendez of Earth took the speaking platform. Many of the aliens looked nervous. 3 months after the first attack on Europa, Earth had fully awakened its military capabilities. Admiral Grant stood in her new command center, which had previously been Sweet Sally's ice cream parlor in downtown Chicago. She had kept the shop's pink and blue sign hanging outside as good luck. "Status report," she said to the officers gathered around her. "The Valtherians have pulled back to the outer system," reported Commander Wright. "They've stopped attacking colonies but haven't left our territory. And our fleet, 57 combat-ready ships with another 20 nearly complete, all crewed by volunteers." Grant nodded, looking at the large holographic display showing ship positions. "And morale?" Wright smiled. "Strangely high, ma'am. People are treating this like the most exciting thing to happen in their lifetimes. Which I suppose it is." "Good," Grant said. "Now we need to end this before anyone starts getting hurt for real." She pressed a button on the table. "Get me the president." In orbit around Mars, newly promoted Fleet Commander Michelle Garcia inspected her fleet. The ships still bore traces of their previous peaceful uses: cruise liners, science vessels, cargo haulers. But now all carried weapons and shields. "Not pretty, but functional," said her chief engineer as they toured the flagship in a small shuttle. Michelle laughed. "Like most things humans make for war, we prefer our beautiful things to be peaceful." The engineer pointed out the window. "Look, the new recruits are arriving." A passenger ship was docking with one of the converted battleships. Young men and women in freshly made uniforms stringed out. They looked excited, as if heading to a sports event rather than preparing for possible combat. "They have no idea what war really means," the engineer said quietly. "Neither do we," Michelle reminded him. "No living human has seen actual warfare, but our ancestors left detailed records of how terrible it can be. That's why we need to end this quickly, before we all remember too well." Her communication officer called from the ship. "Commander, Admiral Grant is requesting a fleet-wide broadcast." Minutes later, every screen on every ship showed Admiral Grant's face. "Men and women of the Earth Defense Force," she began. "For 3 months, we have prepared for a conflict we hoped would not be necessary. The Valtherians broke 3,000 years of peace, and we have responded with remarkable speed and creativity." She smiled slightly, perhaps a bit too much enthusiasm in some cases. There was scattered laughter throughout the fleet. "But now it's time to end this. Tomorrow, we launch our first major counteroffensive. We will push the Valtherians out of our system and make it clear that while humans may have chosen peace for 3 millennia, we have not forgotten how to defend ourselves." She leaned closer to the camera. "Remember your training. Follow your commander's orders. And remember, this isn't a game, despite how some of us have been treating it. Our goal is to restore peace, not to enjoy its absence." Grant out. As screens went dark across the fleet, Michelle turned to her officers. "Prepare all ships for departure at 600 tomorrow. Full combat readiness." On his flagship, now hiding behind Neptune's moon Triton, Supreme Warlord Krax received the latest intelligence from Earth. "They've built a fleet in 3 months?" he asked in disbelief. "Yes, Supreme Warlord," his intelligence officer confirmed, "using converted civilian ships, and their communications suggest they plan to attack soon." Krax paced the bridge. What had begun as a simple claim on a minor mining colony had turned into a potential disaster. The humans had responded not with fear or diplomatic pleas, but with an almost eager military buildup. "We could still withdraw completely," suggested his second-in-command. "The Galactic Council would mediate." "And lose all honor," Krax snapped. "Impossible. We must face them. Then perhaps we should call for reinforcements from home." Crax stared at the tactical display showing the approaching human fleet. The truth was, he was no more experienced in actual warfare than they were. No living Valtherian had ever fought in a real battle. But the humans seemed to be treating the whole thing as if they were simply remembering old skills, not learning new ones. "Send the message," he ordered quietly. "Request reinforcements." But even as he gave the order, he wondered if it might already be too late. The human fleet moved through space in perfect formation. 57 ships of various sizes and shapes, most still bearing the colorful logos of their former civilian identities beneath hastily painted military markings. Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of her flagship, the converted luxury liner now named Slight Inconvenience. She watched the stars on the main screen, thinking about how strange it was to be leading humans into battle after 3,000 years of peace. "Valtherian fleet detected," reported her sensor officer. "They're holding position near Neptune." "How many ships?" Grant asked. 23, Admiral. "Their formation suggests they're expecting us." Grant smiled. "Of course they are. We practically sent them an invitation." She turned to her communications officer. "Open a channel to all ships." "Channel open, Admiral." "This is Admiral Grant. The Valtherians are waiting for us, just as expected. Remember your training and follow your assigned battle groups. And remember our goal. We want to end this conflict, not extend it." She paused. "Battle stations." Grant out. Across the fleet, crews moved to their positions. On the science vessel turned warship Copernicus, Lieutenant Paul Harrison finished setting up his special project. "Entertainment drones?" asked his captain skeptically. "What good are those in a battle?" Paul grinned. "They're designed to create holographic shows for cruise passengers. I've reprogrammed them to project images of ships instead. The Valtherians won't be able to tell which ships are real and which are fake." The captain looked impressed. "That's actually brilliant. Just something I remembered from an old war movie," Paul said with a shrug. As the human fleet approached Neptune, the Valtherian ships moved to meet them. Supreme Warlord Crax stood on his bridge, trying to project confidence to his nervous crew. "They are amateurs playing at war," he told them. "Their ships are converted civilian vessels. Our warships, though few, are designed for combat." His tactical officer looked up from her console. "Sir, they're deploying some kind of drones." Suddenly, the tactical display lit up with hundreds of ship signatures. "Impossible," Crax shouted. "Their fleet was only 57 ships." "The sensors show over 300 now," the officer replied, confusion in her voice. "But the energy readings are inconsistent. I can't tell which are real." Crax stared at the display in growing alarm. Had the humans been hiding their true numbers all along? On the Slight Inconvenience, Admiral Grant watched as the Valtherian fleet faltered, their neat formation breaking apart as they tried to track too many targets. "Lieutenant Harrison's drone trick is working perfectly," said Commander Wright. "Good," Grant replied. "Now for Phase 2. Tell Battle Group Alpha to proceed." 10 human ships broke from the main fleet, circling around Neptune's largest moon to approach the Valtherians from behind. The Valtherians, distracted by the drone illusions, didn't notice until it was too late. The first shots of the battle were fired by Captain Olivia Carter on the Dauntless. Her weapons struck the engines of a Valtherian scout ship, disabling it without destroying it. "Target neutralized," reported her weapons officer, sounding surprised that their hastily assembled weapons actually worked. "Good," Olivia replied. "Remember, we want to stop them, not destroy them." The battle unfolded across the Neptune system. Human ships, moving in coordinated groups, disabled one Valtherian vessel after another. The Valtherians, confused by the drone illusions and surrounded by opponents they couldn't properly track, began to retreat. On his flagship, Crax watched in horror as his fleet fell apart around him. 7 ships disabled already, and the humans were still coming. "We need to withdraw," urged his second-in-command. Before Crax could respond, his communications officer called out, "Incoming transmission from the human flagship. Admiral Grant's face appeared on the main screen. She looked calm, almost relaxed. "Supreme Warlord Krax," she said. "This is Admiral Sophia Grant. I think we've made our point, don't you? Your ships are being disabled one by one, and reinforcements from your homeworld won't arrive in time. Would you like to discuss terms for ending this conflict before anyone gets seriously hurt?" Krax stared at the human admiral in disbelief. Even in victory, she sounded like she was inviting him to a pleasant dinner conversation rather than negotiating the end of a war. "What terms?" he asked finally. "Let's start with you leaving our system," Grant replied with a smile. "We can work out the details after that." 1 month after the battle at Neptune, representatives from across the galaxy gathered at the Galactic Council headquarters. The Great Hall was packed as Altharian and human delegates prepared to sign a peace agreement. Supreme Warlord Krax, now stripped of his military title and serving only as his people's ambassador, stood stiffly at the signing table. Beside him, Admiral Grant and Ambassador Kyle Mendez chatted casually as if at a social event. "Are we ready to begin?" asked the council president. Grant nodded. "We are. Though I must say, this is the shortest war in human history, barely enough time to finish converting our ships." A nervous laugh rippled through the alien delegates. The humans' continued casual attitude toward conflict still unsettled them. The council president cleared his throat. "The terms of peace are simple. The Valtharians will withdraw all claims to human territory and pay for damages to the Europa colony." Krax nodded stiffly. "And the humans?" asked a delegate from the back. Kyle smiled. "We get to go back to our peaceful lives with one small addition." He gestured to a section of the agreement displayed on the large screen. It read, "Establishment of Controlled Military Readiness Program." A murmur of concern spread through the hall. "What is this program?" asked the council president. Admiral Grant stepped forward. "During this conflict, we realized something important. Complete peace, while wonderful, left us unprepared for the realities of a vast and unpredictable universe. This program will allow for regular controlled conflict exercises between willing species. War games," gasped a Zorite representative. "You want to play at war." "Not play," Grant corrected. "Train. Prepare. Make sure that if peace is ever broken again, we aren't caught unprepared." The hall erupted in concerned voices. The council president called for order. "This seems contrary to 3,000 years of peaceful cooperation," he said. Kyle shook his head. "Not at all. It's insurance for that peace. Look how quickly this conflict escalated simply because none of us remembered how to handle disagreements that went beyond words." "The humans are right," said Krax, surprising everyone. "My people attacked because we thought peace had made humans soft. We were wrong. It had only made them forget temporarily." He looked at Grant. "We would participate in these exercises." Slowly, other species began to nod in agreement. 2 weeks later, Commander Lisa Bennett stood on the red soil of Mars, overseeing construction of the first interspecies military training academy. To her surprise, the first alien cadets to arrive were a group of young Valtharians. "We didn't expect you so soon," she told their leader, a former junior officer from Krax's fleet. The Valtharians smiled awkwardly. "We are eager to learn. Our defeat showed us how much we have forgotten." Lisa nodded. "Well, welcome to Mars. Training begins tomorrow." Back on Earth, Admiral Grant finally returned to her interrupted dinner party. The same guests sat around her table, now sharing a meal 3 months delayed. "I'm sorry for the wait," Grant said as she poured wine. "Got a bit caught up with that alien invasion situation." Her neighbor Peter laughed. "Only you would call a war that broke 3 millennia of peace a situation." "Sophia." She smiled as she raised her glass. "Well, it was quite interesting. I'll give you that. I haven't had that much fun in years." "Fun?" asked Mary, still looking shocked. "You found war fun." Grant's expression grew more serious. "Not the concept of war, no, but the challenge of it. The way humans came together, found creative solutions, remembered old skills. She looked around the table. For 3,000 years, we've lived in perfect peace. It's been wonderful. But I think we all felt something was missing, didn't we? A certain edge, a certain eloquence. Her guests nodded slowly. Well, Grant continued, raising her glass. Here's to another 3,000 years of peace. But this time, let's not forget who we are in the process. As they all drank to her toast, a message arrived on her communicator. The first joint human-Valtherian training exercise had been scheduled for next month. Grant smiled. The galaxy was changing, and humans, as always, were leading the way.